Many of us have been sold the idea that spiritual growth or Christian growth is somewhat linear, just like from glory to glory. Spiritual growth is not linear. Think of all the stories in the Bible. Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, David, Peter, Jesus. Their stories are not linear. Think of Joseph, for example. Born into Jacob's family. One of the youngest, one of the favorite. A little bit too loud, a little bit too colorful. Basically, the story of my life. His brothers hate him. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until, boom! His brothers grab him and throw him into a hole. And then they sell him as a slave, and then he starts his new life as a slave in the house of Potiphar. Potiphar? Spotify, did you say? Potiphar? How do you say? Potifar in Espanol. I'm sure that's exactly how it sounded. Potifar, not Spotify. Until one day, he's accused of rape, and his new life as an inmate starts. 12 years later, boom, shakalaka. He's called into Pharaoh's presence due to his dream-revealing superpowers, and he becomes one of the most powerful men in all of the world. Think of the rest of the stories. Abraham's, David's, Peter's, Jesus. The stories are full of, there's something that happens and brings them and takes them from one place to another. At this point in the video, I need to point out that none of the booms look like the other. They don't look alike. Booms don't repeat themselves. What brought you to point A is not what's gonna bring you to point B. Don't expect the same. You cannot ride boom A all the way to spiritual glory and spiritual heaven. Just riding on boom A. This looks weird. I just saw the monitor. I need to say this because we humans have a problem. We tend to romanticize past experience, especially if they were awesome or semi-awesome. Some of us think of past events at our churches, retreats, or very important and influential people in our lives. If we could only replicate that experience today, everything would be different. If we could only have that mentor back. And you know what? Oddly enough, some of us succeed in replicating those events and bringing the mentor back, only to find out that something has changed. Yeah, everything has changed. You have changed. The mentor has changed. The members in your church have changed. This is really hard to say, but our lovely and wonderful experiences of growth are impossible to replicate. I have my own romanticized heroes of the past. Let me tell you a short story. So one of the first churches that I went to in Cochabamba, Bolivia, that is the church where I met Christ, was started by a missionary called Travis. That is the reason I speak English today. It's because of Travis and the school he started. And what a lovely season of our lives that was. Our families remember that as the good old days. Back in 1991, back in 1992, friggin' 30 years ago. It's friggin' 30 years ago. So many lovely stories, so many people transformed, so many meals, so many songs, so many field trips, so many camping trips. But the day had to come when the missionary and their families had to go back to their home country, the US. And slowly but surely the community suffered because of that. So the obvious conversation that grew out of that in the years to come was like, if only Travis were here, this wouldn't have happened. You know what? You know what Travis would have done with this? What would Travis do? What would Travis do? So one day after much preparation and negotiation, Travis came back. So much expectation, so much potential. Imagine the possibilities. Do you know how that story ended? I bet you know. Nothing worked like it did before. Travis wasn't the same person that many of our families had romanticized or remembered, because none of the families were the same. Us, the kids, were already grown up. We were all in university. Many of the people that lived through that had already passed away. What a lovely yet very disappointed return it was. This also happens with sports teams. Oh, if we could only go back to the glory days. Oh, if we could only hire that coach back, the coach that saw us, that understood us, that took us to glory. This is exactly what happened to the national football team of my country, Bolivia. We had this very peculiar Spanish coach called Javier Ascargorta. We called him El Bigoton because of his glorious mustache. He led the Bolivian team to what at that point seemed almost impossible to achieve. Our first and well-earned and deserved World Cup. Never did a Bolivian team before that earn its place in the World Cup. That day will be cemented in the minds and hearts of all Bolivians for the rest of our lives. Bolivians very, very seldom excel at sports, so we take our wins seriously. But soon that team was disbanded, El Bigoton left, and in the next few years, our Bolivian team only got worse and worse and worse. Until one day, yes, One day, after so much negotiation, El Bigoton was hired back. And you know what happened? You do know, right? Nothing. Nothing worked like it did before. El Bigoton was different. The systems changed, El Bigoton changed, the players weren't the same. Heck, football wasn't the same. Heck, the country had changed. El Bigoton did not change the fact that we're still one of the worst teams in South America. Still waiting for the Bigoton miracle. For some of us, the booms in our lives are a phrase in a book that we read. Something a person we love or a person we respect said to us. For some of us, getting married or having a kid or leaving the country is our boom. What got you here is not what's gonna get you to your future self, where God wants you to be. It requires faith. In my case, it took something that I had never done before in my entire life. Leave my country. I had felt stagnant for many years until in 2017, I decided to immigrate to Canada. Here, at the very tender age of 32. I came here to study a master's in theology, and the whole experience transformed me deeply in ways I still don't understand, but that is a video for a different time. There are things you can control and things you can't. There are things that just simply come your way. Things you can't control that change the course of your history, the course of your story, like the death of a loved one, illnesses, traumatic experiences at a church. Those are the variables we cannot control. But there are some other variables that will change your life that you have a little bit more control over, like me, like moving to Canada. I had to take the necessary steps to get here. I had to apply, give a bunch of exams, a ton load of paperwork, come out with money just out of thin air, just like a friggin' magician. If you can take at least one thing from this video, I hope it's this one. You can't go back. For the love of God, you cannot repeat your experiences. The only thing you have left to do is keep moving forward and go and grab the newness that's waiting for you. It's okay, learn from the pain in the past, but don't hire the pastor back. Don't hire the coach back. What was very good then will very likely be unhelpful today. You are a different person now. Love it, embrace it. You are a very cool person. There is new grace waiting for you today. Don't try to eat the old manna. It won't taste as good as you remembered. Because you know what? Apparently, grace has an expiry date, a best before date, and we are in desperate need of a fresh batch. This video right here will give you two wonderful models for spiritual growth, two wonderful metaphors that can help you in your wonderful journey of spiritual growth. So tap right over here, and I'll see you there.